Okay, so what's up, guys? Just wanted to do a quick recap of kind of this time trial that we did over the weekend testing Maurten's sodium bicarb system. So they sent this to me a while back. I wanted to test it out. I told Jackson about it, and then we were like, all right, let's set up kind of a mini study and see if it works for us. So sodium bicarb is essentially baking soda, right? And there's been a lot of research on athletes, and most of the research has been done with a lot of, short, fast efforts, that sort of athlete doing things like that. And so they kind of wanted to know, how is this going to affect longer endurance activities? And so that's kind of what we wanted to see, how it would affect us. So what we did was set up a time trial. We had normal Maurten gels without the sodium bicarb, and we took that, we did a warm-up, about a 20-25 minute warm-up, and then did this time trial that was uphill. We gained about 300 feet of elevation, and we knew it was going to take us about anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. So definitely plenty of time to get that lactate into our blood and kind of see what our levels were. And then Jackson had a lactate measuring device that we had at the top of the time trial. So we each did this. We took our measurements, and then we came back home, had a short rest period. Ideally, it would have been longer. We'll talk a bit about that in a second. But a short rest period. Then we took the sodium bicarb system, which consists of basically mixing the carbohydrate mix into this with water, and then the bicarb little tablets go into it. So we each had a bowl of that, a serving of that, ate that, and then allowed for that to digest. You're supposed to give it about an hour to 3 hours time. We didn't have a whole lot of time, so we gave it about an hour, and then we went right back out and did that same warm-up and the same time trial again. And then again we measured our blood lactate levels. And so that was kind of study design and kind of how we set that up.
Yeah, and it was some interesting results. Obviously it was a sort of a not the most ideal perfect study of all time. It was hot outside. We didn't have the biggest recovery period, but I feel like it was still fairly applicable to an interval session or a hard workout where you're doing a back-to-back type of effort like that. But our hypothesis kind of going into this was, as sodium bicarbonate is an intracellular buffer, we would expect it to increase our blood lactate levels because it's pushing the hydrogen ions and lactate out of the muscle cells into the bloodstream, allowing us to have a higher output of work, higher performance in a time trial situation like this. So we would expect our times to go faster, as that would be the improvement in performance. We'd expect our blood lactate levels to increase and potentially our rating of perceived exertion. For me, I ended up going about 10 seconds faster or so in the trial, and my blood lactate rose pretty significantly. I think from like around 13.7 to almost like around 15, which is pretty high for me. Vic had the opposite effect. He went a little bit slower, like 5 or 6 seconds or something.
Like 7 seconds.
He went slower on the trial and also had a lower blood lactate level, so the opposite of what would happen. I don't really know how to interpret those results other than I think it really depends on the individual. It depends on the amount of time ingested. It depends on the type of effort you're doing, how much time that you have to do that effort, and different types of interval scenarios. So I think there's a lot of interesting kind of takeaways there, just in the sense of maybe for me it really worked. Maybe I was a responder. Maybe Vic was a non-responder. Maybe he just hasn't been training as much as I have in recent times and was more fatigued after that first result, and the fatigue going into that second trial sort of overrode the effects of the sodium bicarbonate. One of the big downsides potentially of sodium bicarbonate that has been well established in the research is GI distress. So traditional baking soda, sodium bicarbonate solutions have caused a lot of GI distress for athletes, and so this is what Maurten is trying to avoid. That was something that we noticed. Neither of us had any sort of GI issues after taking it during the trial. We did have a little bit of nausea post, like an hour post, but nothing too significant that was game-changing for us.
Yeah. And it's hard to say whether or not that nausea was due to the sodium bicarb,
The heat.
or the heat, or, we kind of even started that second, and even the first time trial, we were probably dehydrated starting that too. So It was just so hot outside. After our trial, we feel like there are some cases where sodium bicarb would definitely be applicable for endurance athletes. Most likely for those athletes who are doing short bursts of high intense exercise, or relatively short bursts. So we're talking cyclocross athletes, short track mountain bike sessions, skimo, shorter races, that sort of thing, where they're going really hard but really not for hours and hours. We feel like the research supports its use for that sort of thing, and from the results from our trial, we feel like that might be beneficial. Also, just for training purposes as well, doing things like sprints or hill repeats or intervals or something like that, it could be really beneficial. We're not totally sold on the fact that it could be used for long endurance activities like an ultra marathon or ultra cycling event, just because the research hasn't shown that yet. And we feel like from our clinical judgment, we feel like there's a lot of chance of gastrointestinal upset, simply because the gastrointestinal system is already compromised during something that's long like that, just because there's a lack of blood flow going to the gut and that sort of thing. And you have to already be eating so much that it's just quite already demanding on the gut, so might throw things off to use it for something long like that. That being said, that's not to say that maybe there will be research in the future. There are some athletes doing it right now. We saw Killian during UTMB. He was spooning the stuff out of this, and we didn't know at the time, but we think it was sodium bicarb. And so there are athletes using it. Kind of time will tell whether or not that's going to be beneficial for those longer endurance events.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway here is to just be curious with these kind of things, whether it's supplements, training modalities, other nutritional interventions. As an athlete, don't be afraid to experiment on yourself, try different kinds of things like we did, right? This is not the most accurate, perfectly designed scientific study of all time, but it was helpful in testing a new product that we haven't tried before to use in training and potentially racing. And the only way that you can really know if it's going to work for you is through experimentation. I mean, it seemed like in this trial I was sort of a responder. Maybe Vic was a non-responder for whatever reasons, but you could be different, you could be the same. So it's important to try these things out, especially in training before any type of competition. But it was really interesting to try this new product out and see how it affected us.
Yeah, and it's also important to remember that doing this in the context of the bigger picture, and recognizing that you should only be even trying to do things like this or utilize them in your sports nutrition plan or strategy once you've already gotten the big stuff already under control and well practiced. So your carbohydrate intake needs to be optimized, your fluid intake needs to be optimized, talking about electrolytes when you need them, day-to-day nutrition. All of those are way more important and impactful than anything like this is going to be. This is kind of the cherry on top. So don't think that this is going to solve all of your problems as an athlete if you aren't already paying attention to the bigger picture, more important things in the first place. But for those who want that little extra boost, this could be something that could be beneficial.